Welcome to Stratwatch. Here in episode 7, we'll be covering King of the Hill, specifically between Nubris and Liquid in the Gosu Gamers NA Weekly, and we'll be looking at the composition that has been coming out of one hero limit on King of the Hill, and also the concepts that are critical to playing King of the Hill at a higher level and to improve your own King of the Hill gameplay. My name is RaptorZ, and I'll be walking you through this. In competitive King of the Hill, with the one hero limit rule set, we have seen the arising of a standard comp that you can emulate and you can see throughout all three of these games. There will be slight variations and we will cover them throughout the games, but I want you guys to see the core composition that exists. There is usually two tanks, Zarya and a Winston. Zarya providing barriers, damage, also the control effects she does from Graviton Surge, plus the negation of crowd control with her own barriers. Winston with his mobility and his displacement effects. You have the two supports, the Mercy and Lucio, which always in tandem will be strong throughout all Overwatch's metas, unless the heroes see reworks, because of the ability to resurrect and then sound barrier your team, bop people off the cliff with Lucio, and other interactions that exist between the heroes. The two DPS are uniquely key as far as this composition goes to the standard, because Tracer allows in King of the Hill to manipulate the overtime, the flipping of the point, and also her ability to control flanks and scout is very important. As far as McCree, his single ability to control a flank with flashbang and fan, and other toolkit usage he has on the flank, makes him a uniquely powerful hero in King of the Hill. And also it's worth noting that when your team is controlling the flanks, McCree is a very strong hero to have in addition to a crossfire because of his mid-range poke and his close-range burst. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get to the actual substance of the episode. Getting into the actual gameplay, guys, there are three core concepts throughout King of the Hill that you will need to be using and that are very important and helpful. First of all is that whenever you capture the point and successfully win a fight, it is important that you set up a soft contain. What I mean by this is that you either push forward or fall back depending on what the map specifically requires, so that the enemy team has to come into your position and fight you before they can actually take the point. A hard contain would be controlling their spawn in this game. Setting up this soft contain buys you additional time, gives you a naturally better setup and an arc around the enemy team. The second concept that will come up throughout these games is the execution and importance of wombo combo. And what I mean by wombo combo is the use of a Zarya ultimate as well as damage follow-up, killing multiple heroes at the same time. And we will specifically cover how that's done and its impact when they come about. And finally, controlling the flanks is probably the most important part of King of the Hill. If you are able to control the flanks, you are able to set up the better crossfires, and you are also able to not have to look sideways. And while that may sound very rudimentary and simple, in a game or an FPS in general, when you only have to focus on a certain area of the map and know that other areas are covered by teammates or are not going to be accessible by the enemy, it relieves mental focus to be added to the area that you're looking and allows you to execute more cleanly in that area. So again, controlling the flanks in King of the Hill is extremely important. In this first game, Nubris is going to use what we will call the standard composition. Very easy to execute in its basis, but it has many assets and tools that each player can use at a higher level and with complexity can do a lot more. For instance, we talked about the Tracer and her ability to control the flanks and other such instances. So again, this standard comp, while simple in nature, is very, very complex and can have a lot of assets that you can use to it. So first of all, they have taken the point, and what they're going to do is now back up. They're going to set up the soft contain. On this map, it is important to note that using the control point as a point to have the enemy team come to is actually useful to you. As you can see here, Buds is able to line up a very high damaging Deadeye, although it's negated by the sound barrier, it still ends up doing a lot. And because they know that the enemy team has to go onto the point, they can all focus on controlling the point and shooting at it rather than worrying about the flanks, because McCree on the side is controlling one flank, Tracer worries about the other, and then they just focus on executing the fight on the point. They do end up losing the fight here because of the wombo combo that's executed, and we will be covering it more. But again, note that regardless of which team is controlling the point, the second that the point is under control, the team that has it will set up that soft contain. So here, a great resurrection ends up resetting the fight for Nubris, And although I consider this a similar fight in the notes, this is a long, drawn-out skirmish that the crisis management of Nubris ends up allowing them to win. What they end up doing again is while they had that soft contain, they bled a lot of enemy heroes, they traded a lot of ultimates, but it took Liquid to get to the point and flip it before they could focus on setting up a better position. And because Nubris had that natural tempo advantage in King of the Hill, which is very important, because King of the Hill is very momentum based. If you lose the first fight, you're going to have a very hard time coming back. And so they use that tempo, they use that control to manipulate and dominate their opponents here. Now, I want to get into the wombo combo. I want to specifically look at right now, and we're having to look at Buds. But right now, the Zarya and the team knows that they're all coming down main. They wait for them to properly push in, and then as they're pushing in, when the enemy team is no longer thinking about positioning as much and more about executing the fight, they line up the Zarya ultimate. The way I like to phrase it is a crouching tiger, hidden Zarya. You want to wait and you want to be patient, and when the opportunity arises, you need to capitalize, and you can tell in the comms that they are all looking at that moment. They are all aware that the Zarya is seeing what she sees, and that Buds is able to capitalize on the McCree with that Deadeye. So again, that instance, that right there, that last fight, it is important to note that setting up a wombo combo is an art of baiting. It's an art of waiting for the enemy to be in a poor position and to capitalize on it. Again, also, Nubris especially did a very good job of controlling the flanks. And they also use the controlling of the flanks as a mechanism of their soft contain. So points 1 and 3 that we covered at the very beginning are things that you can kind of group together in some sense, but are very important in tandem. So now we're going to go into the second game. These games may have a little bit of repetition between them, as the concepts will not change. The compositions may change a little, and we will get into that in just a second. But again, guys, it is very important to see the many instances that these conditions and these concepts come in to focus, and you can use that understanding of one to see another condition and understanding of that in the future, so that your conditional understanding of the game is higher. Ultimately, King of the Hill is a lot of conditional awareness and crisis management, and that stems from having core mechanics already correct: positioning, fight calling, and other important aspects of a first-person shooter in general, as well as any game that has a competition between multiple people. So here the composition does change a little bit. Zoms and Buds are going to be switching to Widowmakers because this iteration of Nepal, if your Widowmaker is having a very good game, is actually a pretty strong choice. The first fight goes pretty in favor of Nubris, primarily again because they control the flanks. Cool Matt does a very good job of always pushing out to the right as this McCree and making it so that they have to fight him to be able to establish a position to fight the team. Making it so that the enemy team never is able to get into your face or set up the way they want or control the flanks and manipulate their positions into where you want them to come from. It is very easy to execute your combos in comparison to a world where you let them go where they want. We are going to now switch focus a little bit to the idea of the wombo combo again. This concept with this composition has come up again, and Mesra right here shows a great example of how to be patient. You can watch again and go back, but Mesra takes count of the enemy heroes. He takes counts of the positions they're moving into, and he times his ultimate to hit them as they're grouping together. He also is using his right click to cover the look of the ultimate so it is harder to see, and also that when it lands there's already an explosion occurring. Those are some small things that you can note, but it is also important to note that as that wombo is going off, the Winston is cleaving, Dummy dashes through, but they hunt down Dehang, and they end up taking out Dehang before he can get the resurrection. He actually ends up, Kusta. Kusta goes down before he's able to get the resurrection. He ends up dashing forward on the Mercy to try to, but he goes down. So again, looking at Mesra's eyes there and seeing how much that wombo combo changed the face of this game, it is very hard to change momentum. But if you can use your Zarya, if you're using this composition, to control tempo and reset it by winning a fight via that wombo combo and great execution, you can control the tempo now, and you functionally are the one in the driver's seat. And once again, in King of the Hill, the one in the driver's seat tends to be the one to win the match because it is very hard to reset that and do it yourself. We'll notice that Nubris, although they were the team in control last match, is now the team struggling to find tempo, struggling to find control. Where Bud's last game on the McCree was dominating the flanks, we have Dummy now over here on the side of the Genji for Liquid doing his own domination of the flanks with his own hero, his own twist. And that's what is important to note, is that the concepts are still the same. He is using the Genji to control the flanks. And yes, the Dragon Blade is a very good wombo combo ability, and you may argue that it is better than Deadeye because you can slash multiple times through the Graviton Surge, dash around, and there are qualitative differences. But the important thing is that he controls that flank and he comes in behind and he combos with the Zarya, and that communication and that coordination is there. With wombo combo, you have to be coordinated. But with these crisis managed situations, as you'll see Buds here, just rips out that Death Blossom. Even though it was a little bit rushed, the situational awareness that he saw as a player was, I need to get this ultimate out because there's a lot of heroes around me that are grouped, and they've already used the flashbang. They've already used abilities to stop me from doing damage. So if I get this out now, I can set up my team to be able to clean up the fight. And although that doesn't end up being the case, again, I want it to be clear that there are conditional changes to these, and that you as a player, by watching more film, playing more games, and reapplying these concepts over and over again, will be able to find those conditional and situational differences and be able to perform properly given those conditional and situational differences. Once again here, another devastating ult from Maceroar, another devastating Graviton Surge comes out as they're all pushing into that choke. They have to run up the stairs because there's no flanks for them to use. They haven't been able to use the flanks because if they go after the flanks, Dummy's in there, AZK is there, and it becomes very hard for them to fight. And so Liquid is able to win this match. And again, both teams are using similar concepts. And yes, their compositions are slightly different. The Reaper being very good at focusing tanks, the Genji being extremely strong at comboing with the Zarya, with the Dragon Blade, and also his mobility, jumping, climbing, etc. The core concept of controlling the flanks, manipulating their positions, and wombo comboing them to flip momentum or to flip the point or to just outright shut them out are always going to remain the same. And if you are able to execute those, then you have the point, which means you can then think about the soft contain, controlling the flanks on the soft contain, and milking the point and extending your tempo and extending your advantage. And that's all King of the Hill is about, is milking it, extending it, and using those soft contains and that flank controlling to your advantage. Here in the final of the three maps of this King of the Hill on Nepal, again, Nubris is going to go to a slightly different composition, and so is Liquid. They aren't going to have Winstons, either one, but this is because of an arms race that they have created within this match, a meta that has evolved, if you were. Because both of them are now running Reapers, the Winston is more suspect of taking large amounts of burst damage. They both switch to the Reaper. This Dummy decides that a Genji, because of his personal playstyle, is better than a Tracer here, whereas Coolmat is going to go with the Tracer. The benefits have to be based upon what you play as a player and what your team needs. Again, I want to note that the composition as a standard that we saw at the beginning of the episode is still in remnants here, and the core concepts are applying, but you need to be able to adapt to what you play and what your team needs in each game and in each iteration of the King of the Hill, not just all three put together, but in each individual map. So here again, the controlling of the flank. Over here on the right side, Dummy is using the Genji along with the rest of his team to prevent the side of Nubris from being able to get the high ground advantage. This is another concept that we are going to go over in more episodes in the future, but controlling the right hand flank on this map also gives you high ground control. You only have to worry about the left side of the shrine and then being able to get up onto there, but that is a lot harder with the heroes that Liquid is running. Only Dummy, Zoms less reliably so, the Hang following, and Vonethil, those four heroes with some verticality could make it there. And here a great Graviton Surge from Nubris catching multiple heroes is ultimately irrelevant because of the other Graviton Surge that comes out, Maceroar's. They're able to capitalize on the Graviton Surge better, and they're able to win the fight. And again, if you notice the positioning of the way that the fight goes down, Nubris has to push everyone down main. And because everyone's pushing into main, Liquid has a natural tempo and positional advantage. Here again, they have a high ground advantage, and Zombs is able to come in from the side. They have no awareness of this, and yes, his Death Blossom gets cancelled at the very end, but it does a lot of damage. And it ends up making it so that this next fight in here from Nubris is with only partial resources and without Kusta. And that all comes from controlling the flank. And in conclusion, guys, I want to echo the 3 core concepts again. You need to be looking at the abilities of your team to control the flanks, and after you've won fights and taken the point, to set up those soft contains utilizing that control of the flank. When you control the flanks, you naturally set up crossfires and force the enemy team into running into your team and taking poor fights, giving you more tempo, extending your advantage. And the second concept, or last one in this instance, that I want to devote a whole episode to in the future is Wombo Combo. Execution of your Wombo Combo when using this composition that arises out of one hero limit is very critical to it. And if you're going to pick a Zarya, that's part of playing a Zarya, is executing the Wombo, the coordination, and of course the power that she brings by herself. But that Wombo Combo is very important. If you guys apply these 3 core concepts throughout your King of the Hill play, you will see improvement because these concepts are what allow the top teams to win regardless of the heroes they pick. Again, hero compositions and the way that they play depend on your style and your hero skill and what your team needs depending on each of the maps and each composition that the enemy brings out. So thank you again, guys. Thank you so much, guys, for watching Stratwatch 7. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe to the channel, which you can do clicking above. Subscribing to my channel will give you guys updates, either email or on your phone or smart tablet, whatever device that you want, when I release new episodes or when I upload VODs from my casting. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. These episodes are incredibly fun to make, and I hope that these episodes continue to be useful so that competitive players can learn more, and that you guys wanting to get into the game and want to learn the concept that the better players use are easily accessible. If you guys have any thoughts, feedbacks, ideas that you want to give me for the series, or just my commentary or my analysis or my content in general, feel free to comment, message me, email me, or anywhere else that you guys feel comfortable reaching out. Thank you so much again, and this was Stratwatch number 7, and I hope to be bringing you guys the next Stratwatch within the next 7 days. Thank you so much again, and have a great day.